Hey Drinking Buddies, thanks for joining me again today. We're doing a little bit of wall yoga, and some studios have a yoga wall that is equipped with ropes, and you can sort of use it for traction and balance and things like that. That's not what this is, obviously. It's about using the wall as a support or as a means to add to the stretch. And I always like to start with legs up the wall because it's one of the easiest things that you can do. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself. So the thing about legs up the wall that most people get wrong is the approach, and they end up with their hips way far away, and then they kind of have to scoot and shuffle to the wall, and they don't really have to go through all that difficulty. You just get your hip and your shoulder up against the wall and lie back. And then, as the name suggests, you just throw your legs up the wall. So you want your hips as close to the wall as you can get. You'll let your hips sink down, and then that should give you a nice little stretch down the hamstrings. You can really flex the foot and add to that. If you happen to have sandbags, little 5-pound yoga sandbags, you can place them on top of your feet. Or if you have a free, unused bag of potting soil, for example, you can use that. Dog food, bag of dog food, you can use that as well if you want a little extra stretch and compression. You don't need a lot of real estate, so a lot of people can do this in a hallway or the door of the bathroom. Usually doesn't have anything on it, or you can easily remove anything that is on it. And this is just a nice way if you have any tendency for edema, just to get the fluid to move out of your ankles and in through the rest of your system so that you can flush it out. It's awesome for hamstrings because gravity and body weight's doing most of the work. You can stay here as long as 15 minutes. I wouldn't recommend going too far past that, and I would recommend setting a timer if you're very tired, because you can get nerve damage if you hold this for too long. So if you were to fall asleep here and stay 90 minutes to an hour, that might not work out so good, having this kind of stretch for that amount of time. But anywhere between 1 to 15 minutes is quite safe, and 3 to 7 is a little bit more ideal, especially if you're real tight through the hamstrings. And as I say, you can use weights, you can pull the toes back. It's not the end of the world if you let your feet relax, but you really do get a whole lot more. Some people, when they are dropping the hips forward, they'll feel this gap between their back and the floor, and we don't want that. We want your back to be as flat to the floor as possible so that you don't strain anything or inadvertently get some fascia knotted up, or that would be the sensation. It doesn't really turn into a knot. The next thing that you can use the wall for, and it's a variation of legs up the wall, is just a wide-legged legs up the wall. Just take your feet wide, and so this requires a little bit more real estate on the wall, and obviously my house is designed with yoga in mind, so I don't have anything on the walls that I have to remove. So it's real easy for me to come out and open to the side. So if you're very long-legged, again, a hallway tends to work fairly well. Any place that you can find a spot, really. And again, it's nice because gravity is kind of doing a lot of the work. My sitting bones are still in contact with the wall, but sometimes when you do this, you push away from the wall a little bit, and that's okay. You don't have to be right smack against the wall. And your legs don't have to be completely straight. A lot of people's knees are bent, and that's fine, particularly if you're super tight through the hamstrings, but this just gets you in the inner thighs a little bit as well. And again, I like wall work because you're not in a whole lot of danger of going too far. You sort of have this built-in stop gap in your hip socket that keeps you from going too far. Whereas if you were on hands and knees and you were trying to stretch your adductors by, say, doing a split, there's not a lot of place for your body weight to go but down and into your knees. Here, your body weight's kind of going down and into the hips, and so it's not ever going to go too far. Another thing you can do to open up hip flexors while you're here is to tuck your feet together so that it's like a baby frog position, and you just push your knees against the wall. And again, your hips might scooch you back this way, and that's fine. And again, you know, everyone's shaped a little bit differently, so your feet might not come down all that way. They might be closer to the ceiling than they are to your hips, and that's just fine. With this, you kind of do have to keep your hands on your knees, or else they'll sort of pop back up on you. This is a nice variation of frog. If being on your knees is not available to you, you can always do frog on the wall. Good, so we're going to come up to standing, and this is sort of like a standing split. So again, it's really nice because the wall kind of takes your body weight for you, and not everyone is going to be able to do this. So, and I'm just doing stretches up the wall. So this is not a prep for handstand. I don't teach handstand. So if you're looking for a prep for handstand video using a wall, you'll need to go elsewhere for that. So you just come down into the fetal position so that you can work your way up to standing. So, and I'm going to try to stay in the camera frame. I'm afraid I only have one camera set up, so I can't have a multi-shot so you can see me from all directions, but I will include a PayPal link if you'd like to donate to that cause. So what you're going to do is you're just going to sort of fold forward and get your hands on the floor, and you're just going to kick one foot up the wall, and then just, this might be as far as it goes for you, but to the extent that you can, you'll walk your hands and your foot back, and you're trying to get your leg and your pelvis as close to the wall as you can. So it's just a really big hamstring and inner thigh stretch. You don't have to hold it for very long, especially because you're upside down. And release it down. We'll next take a supported half moon, and I'll show it to you from the side first, but if you're working on balance and you're working towards an unsupported half moon, the wall is a good place to start, but I'll show you sort of what it looks like from the side, because you won't be able to see it very well from this angle, and a block is often really helpful. So I'm going to open out. I've got my left hand on the block, and I've got my block at Papa Bear. So I'm assuming that if you need a block, you probably are a little bit tight. If you don't need that, you can have your hand on the floor. And then you're just going to take your right foot back, open up your right arm to the ceiling, and bring your right leg out parallel to the floor. That's a lot. You'll really feel that in through the medius, and you'll feel that really big stretch through the chest. So if you're new to half moon, you're going to get pretty close to the wall, within a few inches of the wall. Right there. And then you're just going to open out so that you're kind of flat to the wall. And so I'll show you what it looks like from the other side. It's not the greatest view for you as the viewer, but you'll get over it. So you just get kind of up against the wall, like so. You just sort of splat yourself back. And it's just, again, that big stretch in through the upper part of your pelvis and your hips and your pecs, but you're just sort of letting the wall support you until you're able to come away from the wall and hold yourself like that. Good. Next we have the pectoral stretch. So a lot of people, especially after we do Plankapalooza or the Core Crusher videos, you get really tight through the pecs. We do a lot of work there. So you just get a palm on the wall. You can face the wall, and then you turn away from your hand. So I've got my left arm on the wall, my left shoulder's in contact with the wall, but I've turned my body sort of perpendicular to my arm. So it's a really nice, big pec stretch. So I'll do it from the other side. So I just sort of splat myself out on the wall here, and then I turn away from my hand. And then bring it back to center. Another way to get into the pecs and the belly using the wall is an extended puppy on the wall. So it almost looks like you're being frisked. So if you are at home with other people, you might need to explain what you're doing. So you're just gonna get your forearms on the wall. You're gonna kind of walk down, and then you can walk your hands up a little bit. Just let your belly fall inwards. You can bring it down if you're really flexible and just drop your chest through your elbows. And it's just a nice big, big stretch. You can go even deeper if you have that kind of space. I kind of like to have my hands more like pyramids, my elbows kind of at angles, my forearms at angles. I just feel more stable that way. But the traditional way to do it, or the way you'll see most people doing it, is with the forearms parallel to one another. Good, and a final thing to use the wall is, especially if you've been doing a lot of one-footed balance work, the calves can get really tight, and calves are just kind of hard to get to anyway, outside of just stepping your foot behind you from all fours. Get your toes on the wall, and then get as close to the wall as you can. And this is also really good for fasciitis. So if you can see, I've got the ball of my foot on the wall as high as I can go. Some of this is going to depend on how much dorsiflexion you have in your ankle, how much you can bend your ankle going forward. And the same thing here, just scoot it up as best you can. Sort of looks like you've put yourself in timeout, staring at the corner of the wall, but it's really nice on the calves. You can use a wall for a lot of things. You know, if you're working on turnout, for example, you're working on tree and your knee kind of gets away from you, you can practice using the wall as just a reference point until you develop the proprioception. So there's lots of ways that you can use a wall. As I say, a lot of people like to use the wall as a support as they're learning handstand, and I don't support that or teach it. So there are other ways to use the wall. There are other videos for using the wall, but I hope these wall stretches were helpful for you. Rock out with your core out.